different. Can we just have your reaction to these horrific scenes that have been unfolding in Australia this morning?
Well, it appears to be a horrendous terrorist attack targeting innocent members of the public, and our thoughts obviously are first and foremost going to be with the victims and their families at what is obviously a devastating time. This is made even more appalling by the fact it appears a Chanukah party, a Jewish New Year party, was being potentially targeted. And if it turns out that that was the motivation, and I realise we're not certain yet, but if that is the motivation, it makes this terrorist attack all the more appalling.
You're right, Mr. Philp. It's difficult for us to confirm anything at this stage as to the motivations behind the gunmen who are believed to have fired more than 50 times on that crowd gathered on the beach. I mean, you could say that it was quite audacious to have done such a thing when the area was swarming with the emergency services, because they made no secret of the fact that the Chanukah celebration was taking place there. Clearly, Mr. Philp, this is going to spark yet more concerns among the UK's Jews, that they simply aren't safe, that they're not safe in their schools, they're not safe in their places of worship, they're not safe if they want to gather in communities and celebrate events like Chanukah. Are they safe?
Well, I think members of the Jewish community up and down the UK do have very grave concerns about their safety, and I understand why. We saw just a few weeks ago at the synagogue in Manchester, in Heaton Park, an Islamist extremist targeting, attacking and murdering members of Britain's Jewish community simply because they're Jewish, and he was perpetrating an Islamist terrorist atrocity. So I understand that members of the Jewish community here will feel unsafe. I think it's our responsibility, or the government's responsibility, to redouble efforts to protect the Jewish community and to fight anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism, it starts with anti-Semitism and then it escalates into acts of terrorist violence like we saw in Manchester a few weeks ago, and potentially, I do say potentially, like we may be seeing in Australia now. And where there is violence against the Jewish community, people who go around chanting things like "globalise the Intifada" and using slogans like that need to, I think again and stop using that kind of language when we see anti-Semitism being rampant and we see terrorist attacks against the Jewish community, including, as I say, here in the UK just a few weeks ago.
Do we need to perhaps rethink the legislation around such language, Chris Philp? Because I listened to an interview that Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Met Police, gave in the week, I think, to Nick Ferrari on LBC, and he was saying that there was legal confusion around, for instance, the term "from the river to the sea," that it could be argued by lawyers that it didn't mean quite what it did. We've also had arguments around, Allah Akbar and other statements being chanted at marches, and whether they are a kind of mark of insurrection or whether they are a celebration in some way. Do we need to actually ban certain words and phrases from the lexicon when it comes to some of these marches, if the consequence, the unfortunate consequence, may be that it raises the threat of violence against the Jewish community?
Well, I think language that incites racial hatred, well, that's illegal already, and those laws should be policed a lot more robustly, first of all. I think, secondly, any language which incites violence should be expressly prohibited, and things like calling for jihad or calling for intifada, those are, in my view, directly calling for acts of violence. And if the law needs to be tightened to make that clear, then the government should look at doing that. Anything which calls for violence is, in my view, frankly, not acceptable. And both jihad and intifada are essentially violent acts, and nobody should be calling for violence in public in a country like the UK. I would also say that where someone here in the UK who is a foreign citizen, so not a UK citizen, but a citizen of somewhere else, here on a visa or something, if they use language which supports terrorism, which supports extremism, or which incites hatred in any way, including anti-Semitism, then those people should have their visas revoked and they should be kicked out of the country, kicked out of the UK, because there is no place in the UK for extremism, for anti-Semitism, or for expressing support for terrorism or hatred.
Just finally, Mr. Philp, there's been a little bit of a controversy around something that Keir Starmer tweeted earlier today. So around an hour ago, it looks as if a scheduled post went out on X marking Chanukah, showing solidarity with the Jewish community. May the Festival of Lights bring hope, peace and comfort. Clearly that went out as this tragedy was unfolding over on Bondi Beach. It's taken him at least an hour to then update his X feed with a message that I will read now. Deeply distressing news from Australia. The United Kingdom sends our thoughts and condolences to everyone affected by the appalling attack in Bondi Beach. I'm being kept updated on the developing situation. Now, a lot of commentators in the 45 minutes to an hour between those two tweets saying he was too late to respond to this atrocity. Actually, on a day like this, where we've got multiple fatalities, actually the nuances of the number 10 communications system probably isn't the most important concern. But is the criticism of the Prime Minister's handling of this justified, Mr. Philp?
Well, I did notice him tweeting, referencing Chanukah without referencing the Bondi Beach attack, and I did find that a little bit surprising. But he has clearly reacted subsequently. I think it would have been better if he'd acknowledged it at the very beginning. But as you say, I think there are more important things to worry about today, like the victims of this appalling terrorist attack, getting to the bottom of the motivation. And if the motivation was anti-Semitic, as appears certainly possible, that is something we need to be talking about and working out how to fight globally and in particular here in the UK.
OK, Chris Philp, we'll leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.